Welcome to NFL Wild Card Week, Steelers Nation. I'm your host, Jack Sperry, and today we're going to be previewing this week's Wild Card matchup for the Pittsburgh Steelers as they take on the Houston Texans at home on Monday Night Football. Now, before we get into the preview today, make sure you guys click that subscribe button because Jeremy Chuggs, our Texans Today host here at Chat Sports, has challenged us here at Steelers Talk to a new subscriber battle this week. Just so you guys know, we did win our subscriber battle last week versus Trader Joey and the Baltimore Ravens rundown. So Trader Joey owes me a steak dinner. Guess what? I've got my normal wager here, a steak dinner between me and Jeremy Chuggs. Whichever channel adds the most new subscribers this week is going to get a free steak from the other host. So if you guys want to help me out here and you want to help the Steelers win and you guys want daily, free, and informative Steelers content on this channel every single day, make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. And let's dive into this matchup here. The 12-5 Houston Texans will be traveling to Pittsburgh here on Wild Card Weekend on Monday Night Football to take on the AFC North division champions. Man, that feels good. The 10-8 Pittsburgh Steelers. And listen, man, I get it. 12-5 football team with the defense as good as the Houston Texans coming to town, that can be a bit scary. But there's a number of reasons, why I feel pretty good about the Steelers winning this game and, competing in this game and at least making it a game and not the blowouts that we've seen the last several trips the Steelers have made to the postseason. Now, obviously, the big storyline in this game going into it is that the Pittsburgh Steelers have not won a playoff game since the 2016 season. So that is 9 years. And if the Steelers lose this game, that means it's 9 straight seasons under head coach Mike Tomlin where this team does not win a playoff game. And you guys can take a look at the drought and, really how bad the defenses have been for the Pittsburgh Steelers in these playoff games, giving up 45 to Blake Bortles and the Jaguars in 2017. Giving up 48 to Baker Mayfield and the Browns at home in Big Ben's final home playoff game. Then you take 42 to the Kansas City Chiefs on the road, 31 to the Buffalo Bills on the road in 2023, and then, of course, you lose by 2 touchdowns to the Baltimore Ravens last year in Baltimore. And then, of course, you missed the playoffs in 2018, 2019, and 2022. So, obviously, over this 8-year stretch where the Steelers have not won a playoff game, it's been very frustrating. It's led to a lot of Steelers fans wanting Mike Tomlin to move on as the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So obviously, Mike Tomlin potentially getting that elusive playoff win would be huge in terms of his job security here in Pittsburgh for the long haul and how fans view him moving forward because, the longer this drought goes, the more it's going to hang over Coach T's head. But I've been saying it all year, guys. I've been saying it, before the season, during the season, even when we were going through our struggles. I have been very strong on this point. I believe this year's Steelers team and roster is the best it's been and the best Steelers roster since probably the 2017 season. You've got an experienced playoff quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. You've got an up-and-coming offensive line. You're getting DK Metcalf back this week. You've got a good collection of weapons that you can, spread the ball around to. The defense is playing, its best football of the season, or generally speaking. Towards the end of the year now, this team was always built to play its best football in January, and now the time has come to capitalize on these opportunities that are now before us in January in the NFL postseason. And another thing to keep in mind heading into this game is that it's probably going to be really freaking cold at Acrisure Stadium. It is officially January in Pittsburgh, and it's damn cold in the Steel City, man. And Houston is a warm weather football team that's used to playing in an air-conditioned dome coming to frigid Pittsburgh. They're not very much used to coming into Acrisure Stadium and playing, in frigid conditions. And the Steelers, to their benefit here, have been playing in cold weather games for multiple weeks now. Like they had to play in a relatively colder game in Baltimore. They had to play multiple games in a frigid Acrisure Stadium, including this past week's game against the Baltimore Ravens. Not to mention they had to travel to Cleveland. So they played in a lot of games outside, and that should give, a little bit of a competitive edge, in my opinion, to the Pittsburgh Steelers heading into this ball game. Another competitive edge here is that the Pittsburgh Steelers have a crazy record at home on Monday Night Football. 23 straight home wins on Monday Night Football. And of course, this week's playoff game is being played on Monday night So obviously that gives the Steelers a little bit of a competitive advantage. And I think the reason why the Steelers are so good at home on Monday Night Football is because you're getting that little bit of extra preparation. And Mike Tomlin usually, when you give him extra time to prepare, is usually going to win the football game. And that's a sign of a good head coach, right? Whenever off a bye week, Mike Tomlin is excellent. When you give him extra time to prepare, generally speaking, he does a good job preparing his team to play, and they usually come out with wins. Obviously, a 24th straight home win on Monday Night Football would be massive for Mike Tomlin and this franchise, finally getting a playoff win. Plus, DK Metcalf is back this week. And I said last week, heading into the Ravens game, that was going to be the challenge. Winning a game without DK Metcalf at number one receiver, that was going to be the challenging football game. Now, obviously, there'll be challenges ahead here in the postseason. I'm not trying to say there's not, but getting Metcalf back in the fold, I think, makes Adam Thielen a better player for this offense. I think it makes Calvin Austin III a better player for this offense. I think it makes Pat Freiermuth a better player for this offense. I think it helps out the running backs and helps out those passing lanes for those guys and giving those guys opportunities. Whenever you have DK Metcalf on the field, Mike Tomlin said it when they acquired Metcalf, he requires gravity and he requires attention from the opposing secondary, and that opens up opportunities for other people. Now we can take a look at our opponent this week, the Houston Texans, and DeMeco Ryans is their head coach. This is the third straight season in his 3-year tenure in Houston where he has led the Texans to the postseason. They have won a playoff game in each of their first 2 seasons, so keep that in mind. But both of those games were in dome stadiums. Whenever they've been outside, they've lost their playoff games, just so you guys know. But they do run a new school West Coast offense with Nick Caley coming over from the Rams organization this past year. And then the defense run by Ryans himself is a solid 4-2. So they love to be in nickel. They love to play sub-package football. So if the Steelers want to go heavier this week, that could be something that could work against this Houston Texans defense. But you take a look here at the offense here first, and of course C.J. Stroud leads the way as their starting quarterback, third-year quarterback out of Ohio State. He's been playing much better as of late. He had kind of a shaky start to the season, but as this Texans team has really found their stride in the second half of the year, so has Stroud. And then the offensive line, it's young and it's trying to work together, but it's certainly not a terrific group. Aireontae Ersery has played pretty well as their rookie left tackle. But he is a rookie, but he is coming from Minnesota, so he should be actually pretty comfortable playing in the cold on Monday night. But Tytus Howard is their left guard, Jake Andrews is their starting center, Ed Ingram is their starting right guard, and then Trent Brown is their starting right tackle. Then Nico Collins, Jaden Higgins, and Christian Kirk are their top 3 wide receivers. They do live in 11 personnel, so keep that in mind, which, expect the Steelers to play a lot of nickel in response this week. And then Dalton Schultz is their tight end, really solid possession-type tight end with Woody Marks as their number 1 running back at this point in the season. Now, Trent Brown, who is dealing with an injury recently, can't go on Monday. Tytus Howard is going to move to right tackle, and then Jarrett Patterson is going to be playing left guard going up against Cam Hayward of all people. So if Trent Brown can't play, that could be a very major injury heading into this ball game, so keep your eye on that one as the week goes on. But now, you can take a look at what this offense has been able to do this year, and honestly, it's not a super impressive offense. They've had significant stretches this year where they've really struggled. They're 30th in red zone percentage. They have a tough time scoring when they get into the end zone, and they're 13th in points per game simply because of the defense and what they're able to provide for this offense, but it's not a great offense. They're not a good rushing team. They're 31st in EPA per rush. They're really reliant on C.J. Stroud, and you really don't know what you're getting from C.J. Stroud from a week-to-week basis, especially when he's playing in the cold, but we'll talk about him later in the show. The one thing that I will say they do at a really good level is they don't turn the football away. As we know, this Steelers defense has been very dependent on turnover production this year at times, so going up against a team that protects the football the way Houston does could be a problem for Pittsburgh defensively. But now we move over to the defensive side of the ball, and listen, man, they've got some monsters on this side of the football. Maybe the league's best defense this year. Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter, absolute menacing defensive end combination. Dylan Cook and Troy Fautanu, if they're gonna, prove to everybody in the football world that they are the future at tackle for the Pittsburgh Steelers, this would be the week to prove that. Dylan Cook, outside of Myles Garrett, man, he hasn't faced edge rushers this good all season long. But they've also got Sheldon Rankins and Tommy Togiai, who's played pretty well. Since those guys have been injected into this lineup as well. So very solid defensive front for Houston. Then at the off-ball linebacker position, Azeez Al-Shire. Watch out for maybe a couple dirty hits from him. He's kind of known as like a very overly physical player. So hopefully, he doesn't cause any injuries or anything like that. And then Henry To'o is their other off-ball linebacker. Honestly, not a great linebacker duo, but certainly good enough, to make this defense as good as it is. But then in the secondary, you've got one of the best cornerback duos in the game. Derek Stingley Jr. is probably a top 3 corner in football. Just takes away your number 1 receiver, which isn't great. In the week you're getting DK Metcalf back, but Kamari Lassiter is also excellent on the outside in this quarters-heavy scheme. You get Jalen Petrie in the nickel. He's a very, what's the word I'm looking for here? He's a very scrappy player, let's call him. And then Kalen Bullock, a good free safety with Miles Bryant, a decent, strong safety. But you guys can look at the numbers, and they speak for themselves, man. First or second in many key metrics. They're number 1 in total defense allowed this year. They rack up sacks. They rack up turnovers. They're 3rd in turnover production. They're right up there with Denver and, some of the other top defenses in the league this year for a reason. It really is their bread and butter. So the Steelers offense and Aaron Rodgers, even with DK Metcalf back, is going to have their work cut out for them if they're going to win this football game on Monday night. So still to come here on the Steelers Talk Wild Card Week preview. Keys to victory versus the Houston Texans. The 10 things the Steelers need to do to get the win versus Houston. Then we'll talk about C.J. Stroud, some of his pros, some of his cons, and how the Steelers can make him uncomfortable on Monday night. And then, of course, I've got my score prediction here for Wild Card Week. You're not going to want to miss that. That'll be at the end of today's show. But before we get into the rest of this week's preview, if you guys want to kind of get something to remember this very memorable 2025 Steelers season by, the Steelers are AFC North champions, and you can get the officially licensed AFC North Championship t-shirt for your Pittsburgh Steelers by going to chatsports.com/AFC North. They also have other division championship apparel, like other t-shirts, and of course, the officially licensed division championship hat is available on our website right now. All you have to do is go to chatsports.com/AFC North. Guys, this is my first AFC North championship covering the Pittsburgh Steelers since I've joined the team here at Chat Sports, and I'm certainly going to remember this season for as long as I live, honestly. Like, no matter how the Steelers end up this season, even if they lose this week or next week or whenever they end up losing, or if they win the Super Bowl, no matter what happens, man, this is going to be a season I'll never forget, and I'm certainly going to get myself a hat or a t-shirt or both to remember this season by. So go to chatsports.com/AFC North if you haven't already to pick up your AFC North Division Championship gear today. First key to victory for the Pittsburgh Steelers is to make C.J. Stroud uncomfortable. And listen, man, it shouldn't be that hard to do because Stroud is not very good playing in the cold. We'll talk about that here in just a second. But also, Stroud just hasn't been terrific this year. If you look at his numbers in the advanced analytics, like, he's not in the top 20 in a lot of these categories. He's 30th in on-target percentage. Accuracy and inconsistency with his accuracy has been a big issue of him over the last 2 years. He doesn't have a lot of big-time throws, just 29th in big-time throw percentage this year. Now, he's okay in the efficiency stuff, 11th in adjusted EPA per play. He is a good mental processor, that sort of stuff. He doesn't put the ball in harm's way all that much. But this is not, a top 10, top 5 superstar level quarterback that we're going to be going up against. And you guys can take a look at my scouting report on Stroud. I think he's got good size. Mental processing's pretty good. The arm talent is really out of this world. He can make any throw possible in theory. And then his out-of-structure playmaking is pretty darn good as well. I think C.J. Stroud is one of these guys where, like, you like the idea of him because he's got crazy arm talent. He can make any throw in the book. He can throw off platform. He's got really good playmaking instinct, some decent pocket presence. But then, his pressure management, honestly, is not that great. The accuracy inconsistency drives you up a wall when you watch his film. And then he's not very good in the cold, which is huge for this particular football game because it's going to be freezing in Pittsburgh in a night game at Acrisure Stadium on Monday night, all right? And listen, man, C.J. Stroud, he's won 2 playoff games in his career. He's won 1 in each of his first 2 seasons. Good for him. Both of those were in domed environments. In both games where he had to play outside in the playoffs in the cold, the Houston Texans lost, and frankly, Stroud didn't play well in either one of those football games. And then some of the later games, that were played outside in his college career, like both games against Michigan, lost both games versus the Wolverines as the starting quarterback of the Ohio State Buckeyes. So this is somebody that has a long history of not performing well in the cold, and it's going to be freezing in Pittsburgh on Monday night. So and then I take that into account as well, that this Pittsburgh pass rush is absolutely eating right now. You've got T.J. Watt, Alex Highsmith, you've got Nick Herbig, you've got Derek Harmon, Cam Hayward, Keanu Benson, all of which capable of getting after quarterbacks. And this is not like a terrific offensive line for Houston. Like the Steelers have, I would say, the matchup advantage in pretty much every single matchup here along the offensive line when it comes to pass rushers. I mean, you've got Alex Highsmith, and you've got Cam Hayward here. And by the way, if Trent Brown can't go, you're going to have Jarrett Patterson at left guard, and you're going to have Cam Hayward going up against a guy that just hasn't played very well this year in Patterson. But I believe that the Steelers have the matchup advantage in every single spot here along the offensive trench for the Houston Texans this week, and I think that it's going to make for a very uncomfortable setting for C.J. Stroud. I think we're going to see some inaccurate throws. I think we're going to see potentially some mistakes out there for C.J. Stroud. I think especially if the Steelers can get out to an early lead, we might see Stroud press a little bit and feel that pressure that the Acrisure crowd is going to provide. I have a feeling the Steelers defense is going to get after C.J. Stroud, and he will not have a particularly great day on Monday night. But, something that you have to do, and not only do you have to get after C.J. Stroud, but in my opinion, you can live in 2 high safety structures defensively, all right? And, some of the best games defensively we've seen from the Steelers this year is when they live in these 2 high structures. Jalen Ramsey and Kyle Duggar, very comfortable in those kind of quarters looks. They can contribute as run defenders as well. But what that kind of quarters look with 2 high safeties kind of allows you to do is it allows you to be ambiguous pre-snap and, not, tip off what you're doing to C.J. Stroud before the snap. Kind of do some disguises and play your non-traditional Tampa looks. And frankly, this run game for the Houston Texans sucks. Woody Marks is their number 1 running back, and they're 31st in EPA per rush right now. So they're not a particularly great running team. They have to really rely on their passing game. And, honestly, I think you can live in these 2 high structures if you're the Steelers and still defend the run pretty darn well. So that's what I would do if I'm Terrell Austin, kind of like the complete 180 of what the game plan was last week against Baltimore, where you're loading the box and you're trying to stop the run at any cost necessary. But this week, completely different. I think you live in 2 high and you take away the passing game. Also, you got to play clean on the back end. I mean, plain simply, guys, there's multiple huge coverage busts versus the Ravens, and it allowed the Baltimore to stay in the game. Like from a down-to-down basis, the Steelers are actually pretty decent. They weren't giving up like big chunks consistently, but like they would give up huge touchdown plays for giant gains. Like that just can't happen. And we have seen the Steelers secondary, have the occasional coverage bust. Last week versus Baltimore, there was more than usual. Hopefully this week, because they won't be honing in on the run game as much. Hopefully they won't have as many coverage busts, and they really force C.J. Stroud and that passing game to be methodical to beat them in this game. But also, now we can move over to the offensive side of the ball, and really the key to victory on offense is to neutralize their pass rush. And we've seen, the Steelers' offense, this has been a strength of this team all season long. They neutralized Myles Garrett for not one, but both of their games this year. Pretty much nobody else did that because he just broke the single-season sack record this past weekend with 23 sacks. So, listen, man, you got Will Anderson, you got Danielle Hunter, but hey, there's a couple things that you can do where it doesn't matter how good those guys are getting after the quarterback if the Steelers on offense can do these 2 things. Number 1, get the run game going. We saw Jaylen Warren, we saw Kenny Gainwell get going on the ground versus Baltimore, particularly in that second half. And listen, man, I'm not trying to say that Houston's got a bad run defense. They don't. They got a really good run defense. But the Steelers, their biggest strength on offense is still their running back duo, and especially in a game where you're going up against Derek Stingley Jr., who's going to be shadowing DK Metcalf all game long. I think the run game is going to be huge in this game, especially in a cold weather game, all this different stuff. I think Jaylen Warren, Kenny Gainwell can be a big key to neutralizing Will Anderson and, of course, Danielle Hunter. But also, Rodgers has to get the ball out fast, and he's going to know that, all right? And listen, man, I like Dylan Cook and I like Troy Fautanu. This is a unique challenge. You're going up against two star level guys on either side. So it's not like there's a very clear, okay, we're giving help to one side here. You're probably giving more help to Cook, but you're going to have one-on-ones with Troy Fautanu most of the time versus whoever he's going up against. So you do got to get the ball out fast. You got to get the screen game going, the Jalen Warren and Kenny Gainwell. If you're going to throw the ball down the field, do it on your primary read. Find your checkdowns. You got to really keep that in the back of your mind, because Anderson and Hunter can absolutely wreck a game if you let them. Got to get the ball up fast. You got to get the run game going to neutralize their dynamic pass rusher duo. And also in the passing game, it's got to be more than DK Metcalf. It's great that you have Metcalf back for this game, but he's going to be Derek Stingley Jr. is going to be on him all game. He's one of the best man-to-man eraser, put him on an island corners in football. So it's nice that you have DK to take some of that extra attention, but you got to target Adam Thielen. You got to target Pat Freiermuth. You got to target Calvin Austin III. And of course, your running backs, you got to do a good job, like you did this past week against the Ravens, at spreading the football around to a bunch of different people so that Houston has to defend every blade of grass. Then also a big thing here on offense is that you got to capitalize in the red zone. All right, if there's a weakness to this Houston Texans defense, is that they're just an average red zone defense. So the Steelers have been pretty good in the red zone this year. And when you have those kind of limited opportunities, and with a defense this good, red zone opportunities are going to be limited. I think this game could come down to how efficient the Steelers are in getting into the end zone when they get those red zone opportunities, because they might only get 2 or 3 of those this entire game. So hopefully the Steelers can capitalize on those. Also, as always, you got to win the turnover battle. The Steelers, when they lose the turnover battle, man, it's really tough to win. But this is a Houston team that doesn't turn the football over a ton, and this is a defense that does turn the football over a ton. So this is going to be a challenge this week to win the turnover battle if you're Pittsburgh, but if you can do so, that's going to put you in a position to have success and come away with a victory. And then, you got to make the play late. I do think this is going to be a grinded-out football game where it's going to be defense, defense, defense. There'll be a lot of punting. Points will be at a premium, etc. And the team that makes that big play late and comes up with the big drive or the big touchdown pass or whatever, the big special teams play, is going to win the game late. And, the Steelers have been doing that quite a lot this year. They did it against New York. They did it against, they did it against Detroit. They did it against the Ravens last week where they found ways to win. They did it against New England. And guys, this is why you bring in Aaron Rodgers, all right? This is exactly why you bring in a veteran with as much experience in big games like this as Rodgers does, because he can provide that calm in the huddle and deliver when the season is on the line. I mean, this is last week's game versus the Baltimore Ravens in the clutch. So on those final 2 drives where the Steelers scored touchdowns when they were down 4 in back-to-back drives, Aaron Rodgers went 11 of 14 for 133 yards. He had a touchdown, of course, led 2 touchdown drives, and had a passer rating of over 130. So Rodgers really turned it on when the season was on the line, and he didn't even have DK Metcalf in that stretch. So that just shows you, man, that Rodgers, as Mike Tomlin says, this is why you do business with a guy like Aaron Rodgers, all right? Because you bring him in to have playoff success, and this game I think is going to be tight in the fourth quarter, and Rodgers is probably going to have to make a big play in the fourth quarter to deliver us a win, just like he did versus the Ravens in Week 18. Now you take a look at the points per game trends, and because of the Texans defense being as dominant as it is, it's the number 2 scoring defense in football, giving up just 17.4 points per game. That's really the difference here, and because of that, the trends predict a 23-20 Texans win. Now, keep in mind, the margin of error is 3 points. So, the trends would say the Steelers still have a chance in this game, especially because they're home. And what I'm expecting from this game, guys, is it's going to be hard-nosed. It's going to be a defensive battle. Both pass rushes, I think, are going to have some success in this game, and it's going to force points to be at an absolute premium. Fourth down's going to be huge. Red zone is going to be huge, and you got to take advantage of your opportunities when they happen, and you can't just give points to the other team like the Steelers did to the Ravens, frankly, a lot this past week. You got to be buttoned up, got to be ready to go. The extra day certainly helps the Steelers in that regard, and I'm hoping that they can pull out the victory, and I am going to pick the Steelers to win this week, guys. 16-13, lots of field goals, not a whole lot of touchdowns to go around. But, I think this week is the week that Chris Boswell figures it out, goes perfect with his field goals. And I don't know if this would be, a game-winning field goal or whatever, or maybe another missed field goal to secure the win for Pittsburgh. But I'm thinking, cold weather game. I think the offense will do just enough to outduel C.J. Stroud and the Texans in this one. And in a close one, I think the Pittsburgh Steelers get their first playoff victory since 2016, and if that happens, man, that would bring a lot of joy to my heart. Now, before we wrap up today's show, guys, and this week's preview, predict the score for me down there in the comment section. Steelers versus Texans. I got 16-13 Pittsburgh on Monday night. Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. And if you guys are interested in our Monday night watch party this week, it all starts over 2 hours of pregame coverage here, guys. We're going to be going live at 6 p.m. Eastern time. About 2 hours and 15 minutes of pregame coverage. It's going to be our biggest pregame show of the season yet. And then, of course, we'll have live play-by-play and reaction to the game itself. And then also we, of course, will have post-game reaction. So if the Steelers lose, we'll have an end-of-season post-game reaction. But if they win, we'll be celebrating the first Steelers playoff victory in nearly a decade. So make sure you guys tune in on Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern time for the largest Steelers watch party anywhere on Wild Card Weekend. And also make sure you guys click that subscribe button to not miss any of our Wild Card coverage right here on Steelers Talk. Later today, I'm going to be breaking down my film analysis and my film takeaways from last night's win versus the Baltimore Ravens. And then we've got a bunch of stuff this week. Tomlin Tuesday is going to be huge. Bunch of stuff coming up this week that you're not going to want to miss. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Till next time, guys, here we go, Steelers.